afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Your Today. Each and every week that we gather, I am always excited about the time that we have to share related to living a balanced life. Today on this episode, we're going to be discussing the more the merrier. Or is it? The issue with helpfulness. The helpfulness we want, the helpfulness we need, and the helpfulness that never comes. Welcome to A Balanced Life. Everybody, your faves are here today, and I'm excited to bring them in. Dr. Tierney, Charlotte Avery, and Titani Harris. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, ladies.
So how's everybody doing?
Great.
Yeah.
I am so excited about where we are right now in our journey as we are growing and learning to live a balanced life. And one of the things that often comes up is, how do you deal with people who want to help you out? Sometimes it's the most and too much. And I want to start with Charlotte Avery and have this little discussion related to, when do you know to ask for help?
Such a really great question. So for me, we've spent a lot of time together, and so you all know that, I'm a wife and a mom of 7 extremely busy kids. And then I have my own things that I'm doing as far as growing the business and all kinds of stuff. But when I know that I need help, I usually have to do what I call the ABCs, which is to check my attitude, my behavior, and my communication. And that's usually when I know that things are off. But then the next thing that I do is I do this thing called PACE. And what I do is I first put things in perspective, and I ask myself, when I'm overwhelmed and I feel like I'm going crazy, is everything that bad? Like, is it really that bad? And, what can I do? So I put everything in perspective. The next thing that I do is I acknowledge what I feel. I acknowledge that, I do need help, and I'm so very overwhelmed. And then the next thing that I do is I go to my support system, and then I communicate my needs. My support system being my husband, my mom, my friends, people who I've hired to do work for me. And then the next thing that I do after I do all that, and I feel like, I've kind of gotten a good hold on everything, is I just give myself grace, and I just, extend grace to myself.
Charlotte, now what you said was a whole mouthful, in the sense that there are some people who don't really understand the value of knowing when to ask for help and the guidance that comes from, well, let's just say the wisdom that you can get from other people. Why do you think it's difficult to allow other people in your circle to help you when you know you need help?
I think sometimes it's difficult to allow people in, because I think a lot of times, we're caring about what other people are thinking, or how they're, how they see us on the outside, but they don't deal with the things that we're going on internally. And so for me, sometimes people think, Charlotte seems like she's got it all together, managing her marriage, her house, and motherhood and all that. And Charlotte doesn't need any help. So sometimes, people think that I don't need help. And so sometimes I deal with okay, well, what if I do ask for help? I deal with the things that, are people going to view me as, being inadequate and not being the superwoman that they see, whether it's on TV or out, with my family or whatever. And so I think sometimes it has to do with what I feel about myself. And sometimes, some people are like, oh, I don't care what people think about me, but I do sometimes, sometimes I don't, but sometimes I do. And so sometimes it's really dealing with other people's expectations of me, but also my own expectations of myself, whether they be real expectations or false expectations.
Wow. Now you just said a mouthful. I want to keep this conversation going, because I have another question for you related to knowing when to ask for help. And oftentimes when you figure out who you want to select to help you, oftentimes we reject the messenger. And even though we know that's the right person we should go to, how important is it sometimes to take your attitude and put it to the side, just so that way you can seek the wise counsel that you need? Because most of us know that attitude plays a very big part in our ability to move past, to move beyond, to get over those things that are keeping us and our lives out of balance. So Charlotte, tell us a little bit about attitude and receiving the messenger when that help does come.
So, wow. So, Dr. Jacquie, the messenger sometimes can come in the least likely person. And, sometimes sometimes that messenger comes in the form of my kids. My kids can be like, Mom, you're yelling, you're doing whatever. And I'm like, am I doing that? And so I have to not only, give the respect to my children or whoever that messenger happens to be, but I have to respect them and say, you know what? These people are really not trying to hurt me, but they're really trying to help me. And so usually when somebody is coming to help me, whether it's my children, my husband, a coworker, a colleague, or a friend, I always have to check myself, one, my ego, number one, and my emotions, but I also have to ask myself, is this person trying to help me or is this person trying to harm me? And usually when they're in a help mode and I feel like they're not trying to make me feel bad or they're not trying to harm me, then I'm more likely to be able to receive the message.
That makes so much sense. I want to turn for just a second to Titania Harris because she operates in a space that oftentimes trips us up, both men and women. Titania Harris, my question for you today is related to men and the stigma and therapy. Why is it such an issue? Because in our community, women seemingly are always there, out in the forefront, willing to just get it done. But oftentimes when we have to talk to our male counterparts, and again, like Charlotte said, the messenger, talk to us a little bit about Black men in therapy and the role that it plays in healing community.
I'm so glad that you brought this topic up, Dr. Jacquie. First, I'll start with this. So men overall with mental illnesses are less likely to have received mental health services, right? Especially in the past year. However, on the flip side of that, men have a higher rate of suicide than women overall. Let that sink in. For Black men, it's a unique perspective because it's different for Black men, right? When we talk about Black masculinity, Black men have this expectation or requirement to be strong, to be stoic, right? To show up even when they don't want to, right? And so this prevents Black men from being vulnerable, from sharing their emotions. And when you talk about being vulnerable and sharing emotions, that's often related to therapy. So therapy is viewed as the plague, like I don't want any part of that, right? So Black men also have these unique challenges that other men don't have, right? Because of the attention that's placed on their bodies, on their finances, on their looks, and it's rarely placed on their emotional intelligence. And so in these spaces, Black men are expected to be strong and resilient. And, we often dehumanize them and they're often seen as invisible in our society. So I think that's a big part of it.
It makes a lot of sense because when we think about culturally, it all goes down to, we see men in the African American community as priest, protector, provider, that they're in this space where they're supposed to do all of these things, to be there for the family, to take care of the elders, to make sure that the community doesn't fall apart, to keep the church going, to do all of those things. And so, Tanny, when you're working with men, especially in your program that you have related to men, how do you help push them out of that place of feeling self-conscious about asking for help?
Well, the first thing that we teach at the TMH Man Cave is that oftentimes Black men don't feel safe. So TMH Man Cave is a brave space. So that's the language that we use. And we tell men, we're proud of you because you are choosing to heal. You are choosing to share how you feel, right? Your feelings are validated here because I think a lot of times Black men and their feelings are not validated or even acknowledged.
Wow. I love that, a brave space. And oftentimes it's difficult for men to find a brave space. Even when we're just dealing with our family, we're dealing with our coworkers, we're dealing with our friends. I want to bring in someone to have this dual dialogue with Titania and I is Corey BRISCOE. Corey is the managing partner at ABCD and Company. And Corey brings a unique perspective because we've talked before, Corey and I and Tanny and I and most of us related to how things in our past, things that we don't want to share with other people. And there's a freedom that comes with being able to find liberation to not only seeking therapy, but allowing yourself to just breathe and be a man. Hey, Corey, welcome to A Balanced Life.
Thank you, Dr. Jacquie, for having me.
I am excited that you're here, and I'm glad that the group is together because you bring a unique voice to this space. You are what's considered a millennial. And oftentimes, men in that space are very outspoken. They're bold. They're searching for their space in this area in which we occupy in life. So, Corey, when you think about the issue of helpfulness and all these voices that are in your head as a Black man, how do you separate for yourself your priorities and what needs to happen in a certain order in your life?
Well, one, I love some of the comments that I was just listening to, because I think the reality is when you listen to even the comments that you made, Dr. Jacquie, is we as specifically Black men in America have this duality of being, right, head of household, and then if you're a person of faith, priest, protector, etc. And so for me, I think one of the things that I have learned in this journey is that a lot of time you have to separate yourself from the moment. And when I mean separate yourself from the moment, it's easy to take on those roles and responsibilities, and you take them on as you, and it becomes your being, and it becomes everything. And often you forget about the you, right? I think it's easy. I tell people I'm a managing partner and a COO, and that's a part of me, but that's not Corey. And when you take the title on and it becomes who you are, and the problems with that title and the stress and the anxiety with that problem, you look at the state of America that we have right now. Currently, they say 1 in 5 men deal with depression, right? That's, if the male population is about 150 million, you're talking about 6 million men who are dealing with depression, dealing with anxiety, dealing with these issues. And specifically in the African American community, they're going undiagnosed because it's a stereotype. Well, the need to see a therapist, the need that you're soft, or the need that you have this issue. So some of it is first us stepping aside from our things, the things that we have, the places that we occupy, so that we can be ourselves and be whole. And then there's a larger national conversation, and specifically a community conversation about what does it really look like to be a Black man, right? And how have we seen it, and how has it been generationally?
Absolutely. So Tanny and Corey, the next part of this, I'm going to tell you, people who are watching, you may be triggered just a little bit, because one of the things that I've come to identify and understand as it relates to being balanced and how we get men to feel comfortable and in that safe space to talk is being able to be around people who get you. And oftentimes that isn't easy. So Tanny and Corey, can you talk just a little bit about what it means to have Tanny first from a therapy perspective? How do you get men to open up and share their feelings? And then after Tanny, Corey, how important is it to be okay with being vulnerable? Tanny?
That's a great question, Dr. Jacquie. So some women may get mad at me for saying this, but in my work with my clients, I often hear, I can't say how I feel because then my girl will think I'm weak. We have to create the space where men even feel comfortable talking about how they feel with us, right? And although it's a societal issue, I know culturally, we in the African American community often view men as weak ourselves in terms of them expressing themselves, right? So I teach men to also get them what's called an advisory council, right? I think I spoke about this before. Who are your friends that you can go to? Who do you feel brave with? Not necessarily safe, because as I stated before, Black men often don't feel safe. And so I think that's one part of, we have to create the environment where they feel that it's okay to not be okay.
Interesting. Corey, vulnerability. How do you help?
It's an interesting question. And I think for me, when I look at vulnerability, I love what Tanny said. Tanny, I call it the art of building ecosystems or tribes, right? And for me, it's finding that safe space with people that are trusted advisors, with people that have your best interests, and learning that we're all on this journey together, right? For me, I occupy national boards, I sit at the helm of a company, and I do all these things, and I try to be engaged civically. And I've learned, I'm like, there are some other people that have these same struggles of being present at home. I'm recently married, so trying to be a good spouse, and also at the same time, power through my career. And I've learned that and when I find people that have similar challenges or opportunities, it's the perfect opportunity for me to really spark a conversation. I'm an extrovert. A lot of my male friends tend to be extroverts, except for topics like this, right? And so I find that when I am able to bring this up and have conversations and say, like, guys, I'm struggling with this, you'd be amazed at how many people engage the conversation. You'll be amazed at how many people share. And I think what you said, Tanny, was so right. It's about creating this safe space. It's about being able to have conversations that are taboo and then looking and really dealing with it on a societal level. I keep talking about that because, you'll hear there are many men that will tell you, specifically Black men, I've never seen my father cry. I've never had these conversations, right? The impact on how that happens generation on generation, well, it creates a culture in itself, right? And so for me, I've had a blessing that my dad did show that there was strength in emotions. And because of that, I am free in it. I'm free to share my emotions. I'm free in my personal life, in my civic life, and in my worship. And because of that, I am able to have conversations with other friends and help them to be free.
Tanny and Corey, thank you so much for this dialogue, because it really is resonant, with our audience and others who may be listening. The value and importance that we play on weighing the pros and cons, the gains and the losses related to therapy, and how Black men can find not only a safe place, but a brave space in order to have these conversations and dialogue. When we come back, I want to engage Dr. Tierney, because one of the things that's so valuable and important is we talk about bossing up, queening up, duding up, but leveling up. When we think about what it means to level up in our person, who we are as individuals, so that way we are impactful, beneficial to our community, this gives us that opportunity to have such a conversation. Dr. Tierney.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Wonderful.
In your coaching business, you talk a lot about what it means to level up, how to be there for yourself. And one of the things that always interests me about what you talk about, Dr. Tierney, is related to when enough is enough. How do you extract or pull yourself back from engaging with people in conversations that sometimes are just too much and not the right time?
That is perfect question, because like you said, when we think about leveling up, something that I like to tell my clients, not every need has your name on it. Sometimes we can become drunk with needing to be needed. And so we'll start to tend to everyone's needs, even not our own needs, because we're trying to help or we're trying to get to that next level by doing more. And so we think that if we pile our plate with more things, more helping, more service, more, not that any of those things are bad, but when we don't examine our plate and we're already at capacity and we're adding in more things because we have this need to be needed, that's when we'll start to run, into trouble, so that friend that you think she might need you, she might not need you at all. She might need me, or she might need future Dr. Tanny, he may not need you. He probably needs to go talk to God, and thinking about that, what we don't want to do is put our name on situations that really we should be calling on the name of Jesus. So we definitely want to make sure that we're not attaching our names to needs that never even belong to us in the first place.
Ooh, child, you just said a mouthful, because that is one of the fastest ways to get out of balance, is always running into someone else's stuff without asking first whether or not you're actually needed there. Here at A Balanced Life, one of the things that's very important is that we make sure that we're having substantive dialogue, substantive conversation, and always allowing ourselves to gauge when we need to invite other people into our space. Dr. Tierney, when you think about how we invite other people in, we all have friends and family who are doing the most and too much. How do you deal with people who are consistently being busybodies in your life?
Absolutely. The first word that comes to mind, boundaries. And not barriers, so a lot of times when we hear the word boundaries, we automatically think barriers, but the difference between the two is that boundaries are about us. It's what we need to ensure that we're staying on level of lane. Barriers are about the other person. This is where we then put the stiff arm and say, I don't want them doing this. And it's about their behavior or whatever you're seeing from their side. Boundaries are about us. And so when we start to set boundaries in our lives that are based on our goals, our need, what it is that we need to stay balanced, then it's easier for us to say, thanks, no thanks. Something else to keep in mind is that we shape people's listening for us. So if we're always answering the phone when they call, we can't expect them to stop calling. If we're always running to their aid whenever they stub their toe, then we can't get upset that we're the first person that they expect, or there's this expectation for us to come in with our capes and and fix it. So when we start to set those clear boundaries, we communicate those boundaries, we enforce those boundaries, and we remember that we are the ones that shape their listening for us, then it's easier to take that step back, take that breath that we need so that we can then get to where it is that we're trying to go.
Wow, getting to where you're trying to go often is not easy. Thank you so much for those words of encouragement and wisdom. And, a part of our spirituality and our growth is being able to say, I got me. And sometimes there's no one to turn to. And oftentimes the only way that you can get help is to turn your trust to the Lord. Now, I recognize that everybody that watches this show is not a person of faith, but we all believe in something. And that belief allows us to find a space in which we can grow, in which we can evolve. It gives us an opportunity to set the tone for each of our lives, both individually and collectively. When we come back after the break, I want to bring the entire group back because it becomes important for us to see voices. Let me tell you why that's important. I said see voices because oftentimes when I think about who I need to talk to, a face pops in my head. And so when we come back after the break, I want to engage our group in what this continuation of having people, or as Corey said, our tribe coming to our aid. Each of our guests today, Tanny, Dr. Tierney, Charlotte Avery, and Corey BRISCOE, have brought some meaningful insights to the table. When we're back after the break, let's continue to unpack what it means to have balance in our lives.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited again that you are here. This is our time, as I call it, the selfie hour, the time that you can take for yourself to sit back, learn, and engage. So grab your pen, your pad, your digital device, and if you desire, grab the Word of God, because sometimes our guests will go to that place where they know that their help and their faith comes from. Everybody, how you doing? Hey, y'all.
Hey, Dr. J.
Wow. You guys have really given our audience some tips and tools that they can really begin to live by. And I know that you were like, when is she going to call my name? And that's why we're here in this group, because I know that you have some things that you want to add to everybody else's dialogue and conversation. So, Charlotte Avery, what say ye, ma'am?
So, first of all, I loved what our great Dr. Tierney said, because, you know, when you're talking about people, and what Corey was talking about as far as tribe, and, you know, when to set boundaries and when to lean on your tribe. You know, tribe is so important and boundaries are so important. And I love what Dr. Tierney said, because, you know, she said that boundaries are for you. You know, they're to help you and what makes you, what's going to be best for you. And barriers are for them, the outsiders. And so I love what she said, because that was a really great aha moment. And so I really thank her for you know, giving us that example, because, you know, sometimes we get it twisted and we think that we just use the word boundaries, but there is a difference between boundaries and barriers. And then tribe. Oh my gosh, tribe is so important, because, you know, when people are your tribe, they're not your acquaintances, and they're not people who are just, you know, I see you every now and then, but they are your trusted people. You know, Jesus had, you know, Peter, James, and John out of the 12, right? But then, you know, for me, you know, I can count on one hand my people who are my go-to people that come hell or high water. I know that they're going to be there. But here's the other thing, is that their support, they're not just supporting me. Tribe has to be reciprocal. And if people are not reciprocating within your tribe, then you might need to replace somebody in your tribe.
Ooh, girl, you have said a mouthful. Oh, let me tell you, that is something that we should live by. Stop being there for people who will not be there for you. Future Dr. Tanny. I'm telling you, girl, oh my goodness, I cannot wait. So what do you have to say for us? Because it is difficult sometimes. What do you have? You're on mute, my love.
Sorry about that. I like what you just said about being there for people who are there for you. I always like to say you can't pour from an empty cup, right? You need to be refilled, especially by your tribe when you're filling up others. Also, I believe in giving people your best, but not your everything. Because when you give people your everything, you leave nothing for self. But when I give you my best, then I have something left over for myself. So that's my motto. I believe in giving my best throughout everything, because your best is all you can have, all you can ask for. When you give away your everything, you have nothing left over.
Corey, pouring from an empty cup. That's something that you have discovered and learned, sir. You mentioned to us earlier in the segment that you are newly married. Congratulations to you. And as you're finding your space, your barriers, your boundaries, that time that you still need for Corey, being married, how does that play? And this is for all our single people who are watching, because single people need balance too, as well as newlyweds. So Corey, when you think about the growth that you've had and moving through your relationship of dating and courting your lovely wife, and, you know, now being married, how do those things work?
What a great question, Dr. J. I'm going to say something, folks, that, you know, depending on the generation you grow up, you might disagree with this. But I find for me and my wife, how we are able to keep this balanced living is, the reality is, I encourage her to have her friends. I want her to have her tribe. I want her to have relationships, because I often find, you know, in the familiarity of the two of us, right, there gets to a point where she's saying something, I'm saying something. It's like, yeah, I hear you. But there's something with the multitude of counsel with people that are like-minded thinkers, that have the same belief or value systems or guiding principles. And so I encourage, we love spending time together. We enjoy it. But I tell her, go spend time with other people. Expand your worldview. Let me see how you're growing your mindset and your horizon. Because the reality is, when you properly do that and you have a good foundation, at least I'm learning from the old folks, they say when you have that proper good foundation, when Christ is the center, it comes back and you're able to really separate the wheat. You can really separate the wheat from the tare. And that's what at least I find myself doing, is we're spending time together, but we're getting counsel from wise people. We're getting counsel from people that we have seen do great things. And I think that's one thing that I would say. In this social media fad, in this era where everyone has a pulpit, don't let everyone preach into your life, because the reality is some people aren't, just because you got a Instagram or a following don't mean that you can preach, and don't mean you should be preaching to people's life. So I say that to say, be careful of who you listen to.
Wow, this is very interesting conversation and dialogue, and everybody can come back on the screen for this, because one of the things when we talk about how we grow and how we guide ourselves in the daily lives that we have, it is, we live in a very fast-paced society. Everybody is on social media, and we have a tendency to treat it like a buffet. I'm going to go pick this from this person. I'm going to pick this from that person. I'm going to go over here and eat off of this smorgasbord. Oh, I like their charcuterie board. Oh, their vision board spoke to me. When we are trying to live a balanced life, I want to go across the board, and I'm going to start with Dr. Tierney. And I want to ask each of you this very simple question. How do you decide when to pull yourself away from social media and start to listen to your own voice and give yourself wise counsel? Dr. Tierney.
Every day. I do it every single day. And that's saying something, because social media, that's where we market, right? I have a business, so that's where we show up. That's, if you're not on social media, then it didn't happen. That's kind of the whole thought now. But I literally have to pull back from that thing every single day, because if I don't, I'll start to get distracted. I'll start to try to mirror my message to what I heard someone else say, or, and it will get me out of focus on what God spoke to me, on what it is that he told me to do, on how it is he wants me to run my business. And then here comes the anxiety, and here comes the stress, and here comes the overwhelm, because now I have all of these different voices, going on. And God is like, are you going to listen to me? Are you going to do what I told you to do? So every single day, it's like I have to pull back, and sometimes I don't even go on social media. I'm probably on social media like every other day, to be honest, and then I'll do my posts and just completely pull back, so that I can make sure that I'm maintaining that clarity, of vision, and that clarity of voice of what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, and not, as you said, Dr. Jacquie, eating from the smorgasbord of what everybody has. And as our so finally said today, just because everybody can preach don't mean they're supposed to be preaching into your life, church. So I pull back every single day.
Absolutely. Tatiana Harris, as it relates to what we're discussing in therapy, wow, I know that you have some tips and guidelines, to help people deal with social media, because we have a tendency to compare ourselves to what's happening. Oh, my life isn't this because so-and-so is doing that. And to our audience that's viewing, please know that most people post the highlights of their lives, not the lows of their lives. Titania.
Yeah, so I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to say that social media, most people post what they want you to see, right? Not what's really happening. And so I always encourage clients, look, especially when you're in a dark place and you're looking on social media, it often exacerbates those feelings of anxiety and depression, because you are comparing yourself to others. I know for myself, Dr. Tierney talked about it, how she removes herself every day. I do social media fast, right? Which I have to do because of the kind of work that I do. I listen to people's problems all day. I have a staff of 15, so they're clients as well too. So I have to protect my energy, because oftentimes there's so much going on that I need to unplug. But I would encourage others to do what I call too a social media fast as well too. It's so important, and it's good for our mental health. Just a break from the screen, a break from the everyday of people's lives and what's happening and what's a lot of times not real.
Interesting. Now you mentioned the word depression, and with you being, you're in the Midwest, and in the Midwest and above, seasonal depression is a thing. Now, I lived in Chicago, and I can tell you that it hit me from time to time. I'm like, it's June. Why is it snowing? And so when you're constantly seeing these gray clouds and you have things going on in your life, talk for just a minute about some ways that you and your practice, Titani, help people move through seasonal depression, because some people may be in that right now.
Listen, this pandemic has made it very difficult. It's taken away some of our usual coping mechanisms, right? As the world is starting to open back up, it's not the same as it was before, right? So we encourage people to stay connected with their families, exercise, as we talked about in the last segment, how exercise and working out helps remove these mood boosting endorphins, right? Read something for leisure, watch your favorite television show. I mean, there's so much that you can do. Get a massage, have a nice meal, you know, it's a myriad of things that we can do, but stay off social media during this time. I would say have a social media limit during this time, just because if you're already feeling that the effects of seasonal depression, that can exacerbate some of those symptoms.
Now that makes perfectly good sense. I tell you, Apple has a way of telling me on my watch. It says things like, take a moment to breathe, give yourself some mindfulness time.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I found very interesting is that my phone will tell me that my screen time is down, as if I'm supposed to be offended that I'm not on social media or using my devices. And I actually use that as a gauge to determine that I am balanced in the sense of always needing to feed that need to know. And social media has a way of keeping us in that space, especially during this pandemic. We spent a lot of time on social media. We opened up accounts on YouTube. We were learning how to do TikTok dances. There were so many things. And whereas there's a place for those in our lives, when we think about ways of coping, how to get more things in our toolkit that we can use to combat it, it does make it difficult to stay on pace with your own life. One of the things that, Corey, you mentioned something very interesting about how your wife has opportunity for herself. In this space of African-American men and the awkwardness that comes with being social, how do you encourage the young men that you mentor and others in your business community or spectrum to get out and do something other than watch television and be on social media?
You ain't said nothing but a word, Dr. Jacquie. It is amazing to me how a lot of our problems, specifically as Black young men, as Black men, it stems out because we do not have a world view. We are so limited in our thinking and our understanding. And we're sometimes, if we're honest, we're shallow in our thoughts and approaches because we have not seen anything else. And the reality is, the more that you commune and you have and hear other people's guiding principles and what they believe and what they understand, you're able to, if you have a foundation, to fortify your foundation. If you don't have one, build one. And you're able to start really thinking about, okay, what is it I believe? What is it I do? Even in my own relationship, you know, my dad says it all the time. He says, Corey, you need to learn to live vicariously through me, right? For all the mistakes that I've made that I don't want you to make, look at them, analyze them, and do better, right? And so I always tell people, every time that I can take an experience and don't have to go through the heartache and don't have to go through the pain and don't have to go through the trials, it is enough being a Black man in America. There is enough trials and tribulations in itself. And I share with people, you got to get out your cocoon. You got to, again, find that tribe, that ecosystem. You got to find people that are like-minded. And I'm sorry, and this may offend people, but if your whole life is on Madden and your whole life is on the Xbox, your worldview is going to be limited. And a lot of the issues and challenges are just self-inflicted after a while. They're self-inflicted because you don't have that perspective. And so I take the time. I tell people all the time, take me to a new restaurant. I'm a Southern little country boy. I prefer I sit in the same church seat. I sit in the same I learn my habits, but I surround myself with friends who say, let's go on different excursions and different adventures. And I find that I am growing and I am learning that the limits that I even put on myself don't exist.
That's interesting. Charlotte Avery, Corey mentioned an interesting word, and he talked about this word in terms of the positive side of being balanced, living vicariously for the purpose of learning from other people's mistakes. Now, as a mom and a wife and a businesswoman, we see women all over, and they live vicariously through their kids, allowing themselves to get out of balance. How can you help our moms who are out there doing every PTA meeting, every soccer club, they are at every dance recital, they are pageant mom, dance mom, every kind of mom, except for being their own person? How do you help them? Because you have really good blending and balance and boundaries when it comes to this is Charlotte time.
So I am very, very, very serious about my family. I'm very serious about my husband, my children, and all the things that, that we do and all the things that they do. But I am even more serious about my time, because I have to be a happy, healthy, whole woman. Because I was a woman and I was doing things before I was a wife and a mom. And so I remember there was a time in my life, I think I was at like baby number 3, and I was just so like overwhelmed. And I had what I called them the whams, the what about me's. And I remember that season of my life because it seemed like I was doing everything for everybody but myself. And at that point, I decided, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I was somebody. I had purpose, hopes, and dreams before I was this man's wife and these people's mother. And I had to get back to my real self, not just my mom self and my wife self, but I had to get back to the things that gave me joy, the things that, fulfilled me. And some of those things were writing, and some of those things were, getting back in the gym and working out and, just taking care of myself. I used to be a tomboy, and I still am because I'm most comfortable in sweats. But you know what? I love going and playing in makeup, and I am really serious about my girl time. Like, I have friends, and we literally calendar when we're going to spend time together so that we can get away from our husbands and our children so that we can get back to being us and being girlfriends and not the other parts of our lives that are still very important. But I find that when I'm not doing me and when I'm not doing the things that fulfill me and make me happy, it makes me miserable. And then that makes everybody else miserable, because let's just tell the truth. I am the thermostat. Moms are the thermostat of their families. And so when mom is not happy, it's not happy life, happy wife. It's really happy spouse, happy house. But if mom is not happy in the house, it can be a really big mess. And so I always encourage moms, even my clients. I don't even work with women who will not commit to spending 1 hour a week, just a week, doing something for themselves that has nothing to do with their spouse or their children. It is an absolute must, whether it's going to get a cup of coffee or going for a walk or going to a movie with your girlfriends or going to dinner. Do something that has nothing to do with anybody, but totally and fully fulfills who you are as a woman, period.
Absolutely. Let's bring everybody back in, because I want to get one takeaway from Dr. Tierney and Tanny and Corey. What is your one takeaway when you think about the issue with helpfulness and having too many people in your space? What's your one takeaway, Dr. Tierney?
I would say my one takeaway is boundaries, and just making sure that we have our boundaries and that those boundaries are set based on what we need and not us becoming drunk on needing to be needed and doing everything for everyone else and ignoring ourselves.
All right, Tanny?
I would say choosing self, right? When you choose yourself, when you choose yourself in terms of making sure you're good, then everybody else around you benefits, especially moms.
Corey?
I think I would say, simply put, that there is not a manual for life, but you can create a roadmap. And the sooner that you create one that is conducive to your life, the sooner that you're happy, the sooner that everyone around you that is in your ecosystem and tribe can see that, and you can prosper.
And Charlotte Avery?
Well, I'm still in Dr. Tierney's Amen corner about not being drunk about needing to be needed. Like I'm still right there. Like don't be in that place. Like I'm still there and I'm going to continue to marinate on that like for the rest of the day. I promise you. Thank you, Dr. Tierney.
Outstanding. Everybody, thank you guys for joining us today on here at A Balanced Life. I am in that space right now where I believe that where we're going and what we're doing as individuals is tantamount to the success of the individual home, the cities, the country, the state. I mean, honestly, if we are not in a space of discovering balance and having that particular area in which we need to focus and direct our attention, how will we ever get clarity?
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
As I think about, my own personal reflections from the show today, it brings me to an understanding that everything is needed. One, make certain that you don't have too many people in your ear, because oftentimes it can challenge you in a very ineffective way to move and to take charge of that which is yours to take ownership of. The second thing that I'm reminded of after our conversation and dialogue today is have yourself some me time. You matter. And without you in the equation, other things cannot go according to the plans that have been set in motion. And then third, I think the thing that at top of mind is most, I know when I'm needed and I know when I'm not needed. So give yourself space, literally, give yourself space to not be needed by other people. It will allow you to free up time. You'll look back and say, what was I doing in this time? Where did this extra hour or 2 hours in my week come from? And it's because you refuse to always be the person that everyone called upon. This has been an outstanding day. This has been a wonderful episode. I'm excited for our guests that have joined us, Dr. Tierney, Tanny Harris, Corey BRISCOE, and Charlotte Avery. Thank you all for joining us on here at A Balanced Life.